name is Merv Norton. I served in the 1st Signal Brigade from its inception until September of '66.
Emmett Page, Jr., Lieutenant General, U.S. Army, retired.
My name is Thomas Matthew Michael Renzi, Lieutenant General, U.S. Army. Very lucky to take command in February '69 and held it till June of '70 when I came home here to Hawaii.
Lieutenant General Peter Albert Kine. I was born in Red Wing, Minnesota, but I grew up in Wisconsin on a farm.
Colonel John Wright. I commanded the brigade from June of '98 to June of 2000. I retired as a colonel in 2002.
Colonel retired Richard H. Brina. I was a major at the time. I was assigned to the 41st Signal Battalion, 1st Signal Brigade at Camp Koiner, Korea. I was the Battalion S3 for 13 months.
I'm Jane Malashevsky. I'm a retired colonel. At the time I served with the 1st Signal Brigade, the first time was in 1992. I was a major and I was assigned as the S3 for the 36th Signal Battalion.
Ron Bouchard, I'm currently a Brigadier General. I've had the opportunity to serve 3 times with the 1st Signal Brigade. My first opportunity, of course, that began in 1989 when I reported to the 304th Signal Battalion and I became their S3. I was their S3 for about 17 months, and at the end of the 17 months I moved on over to the Battalion XO position. The second time I happened to go to the 1st Signal Brigade, I had the pleasure and privilege and honor to be the battalion commander for the 307th Signal Battalion. At the time, the 307th was located in Wagwon, Korea. In 2002, I returned back to the 1st Signal Brigade as the brigade commander.
Brigadier General Warren Patterson. First name is LaWarren, but I go by Warren. I am currently the Deputy Commanding General for NETCOM 9th Signal Command, headquartered at Fort Huachuca. We're responsible for operating, defending, and maintaining the Army's land war net globally. I had the pleasure and the honor of commanding the 1st Signal Brigade from 2004 to 2006, and then for 1 year from 2006 to 2007, I had the pleasure of being the Special Assistant to the USFK Commander, then General B.B. Bell.
I'm Brian Moore. I'm a colonel in the Army. I was the 1st Signal Brigade Commander from July 2006 to June 2008.
For me, the story of the 1st Signal Brigade really starts in Japan, many years before.
I was with the Defense Communications Agency in the Philippines, and we were responsible for all the communications in Southeast Asia.
And I was here in Stratcom. When Stratcom was created as a major headquarters, I was brought in. I'd been in the headquarters in OC SIGO. And so I was sent on the Far East on a trip to resolve the problem with 2 other tropo systems that did not work. One between the Philippines and Taiwan.
So when the war started, we moved in and started planning for the communication system that would be needed by the U.S. forces and others in Southeast Asia and Vietnam during that period of time.
In the Philippines, I was helped by a young man that I had met first as a captain in Japan. His name was Emmett Page.
He was the guy that that started most of the things from a communications point of view. He was back here in Washington, did the planning, prepared the specifications for the communication system that would be out there.
Came back, he showed me the draft message to establish the integrated wideband communication system. Because what he was laying out was the systems in Thailand using equipment that had been stored in the West Coast for several years, intended for Indonesia but never shipped. By this time, Major Emmett Page had been transferred to Fort Monmouth. He was responsible for the procurement side. And so we worked together quite a bit in the year of planning of the IWCS.
For the installation of the integrated wideband communication system that Colonel Norton had prepared the specs for, sent them to Fort Monmouth, to the U.S. Army Communications Systems Agency there.
He spent a few days selling the program in the Pentagon and telling people when they got the funding, he would have a contract in 30 days. Nobody believed him. He did it.
On April 1st, 1966, in the Republic of Vietnam, the 1st Signal Brigade was activated in a Long Bean base on the outskirts of Saigon. The brigade quickly formed to begin its mission to support the U.S. forces in the Republic of Vietnam. The creation of the brigade brought together two signal groups, 2nd and 21st Signal Groups, comprised of 12 signal battalions, totaled over 10,000 soldiers. Its mission was one of the most complicated ever given to any signal unit in the history of warfare: to originate, install, operate, and maintain an incredibly complex communications system that fused tactical and strategic communications in Southeast Asia into a signal unified command.
In the 1st Signal Brigade, and I was responsible for the engineering, installation, and later the operation and maintenance of a part of the wideband communication system that connected tandem switches, tandem telephone switches that were all over Vietnam and Thailand, in addition to the telephone exchanges that were all over Vietnam and Thailand. And you could sit on a mountaintop in Thailand, or you could sit in Laos and dial the Pentagon, or dial somebody back here anywhere in the U.S. or anywhere around the world.
So I planned a microwave system to interconnect several locations in Saigon. And we put that in the plan. Nobody ever asked us about it. No one ever questioned it. We just did it.
The command also accompanied infantry troops into Cambodia. The communications personnel in the field adopted "keep the shooters talking" as a motto.
We were looking for a phrase of what we were doing and how we were doing it. I felt very strongly that the way to run a war was to shoot and move and communicate, so keep the shooters talking was the basis for my whole life, and all the soldiers and folks that were under me had the same viewpoint of the command control, so necessary to win a war. It was all embodied in keep the shooters talking.
By the end of 1966, 1st Signal Brigade consisted of 23 signal battalions organized into 6 groups and totaling about 20,000 men. Nearly all of these units arrived or were activated in Southeast Asia in a short period from April through December 1966. Between April 1966 to June 1967, Brigadier General Robert Terry served as the first commanding general for the 1st Signal Brigade in Vietnam.
Bob Terry was a West Point classmate. I was in M Company, the last company in the Corps of Cadets. He was in K Company. We knew each other very well. His wife Naomi and my wife Claire were very close. A heck of a guy. I think he was much more serious than I am, but a great commander. I think I'm more open and more friendly. Bob was more serious, but ran a good brigade.
Colonel Terry took command immediately. No question. He was in charge. I was very impressed by him. supportive. It was Colonel Terry then. He said, tell me about your defense plans. We're strategic communicators. We didn't do defense plans. In the history of Vietnam, there had never been an attack on a communication site. Why? The old system, the backport system, put in by Page engineers a few years earlier, had circuits from the PTT. So if you wanted to call to Hue from Saigon, you had to go through the military system. Why would they want to knock it out? So we never worried about that. He said, next week you will have some defense plans. Yes, sir. And we did. And that went on. From then on, we had to develop defense plans for every site. And the first one was for Praline, about 20 miles from Dalat. Was building a new site out just on top of the mountain. He said, well, we'll have an armed guard to go up there. He got a platoon up there of infantry to guard the people going up. Machine guns up front and back of the convoy. He only went up in a convoy. And on Thanksgiving Day, '66, they were ambushed. And I had been up to the site just a few months before with a .45 and a clip in my pocket because we had to carry it. And I was just in an open Jeep with the site manager who had no weapon and never thought anything about it. And he was in this convoy. He was not injured, but there were 7 or 8 killed. Some Americans, some I think Filipino Page contract workers. And so the site construction was disrupted for one day. They went to work the next day. Nobody left the job except those wounded. And the site got finished on time.
From June 1967 to February 1969, Brigadier General Harlingen commanded the brigade with more than 21,000 soldiers and 6 signal groups with a total of 23 signal battalions operating in Southeast Asia.
Brigadier General Harlingen was a West Pointer. Got out of West Point about 4 years before I did. A very good thinking gentleman, a very knowledgeable communicator, a good friend, and really did help me very much when I took over from him of having the command just right for someone to take it from where he left it and make it into the best in the world.
Between February 1969 to June 1970, Major General Thomas Renzi, along with Command Sergeant Major Hubert Balkwheel, led the brigade's mission throughout Southeast Asia by providing communications to forces scattered over 60,000 square miles of torrid jungle, mountain ranges, and coastal lowlands, much of which was underpopulated and infested with enemies.
Very lucky to take command in February '69 and held it till June of '70 when I came home here to Hawaii. The 1st Signal Brigade was a great unit. I mean, I had a Brigadier General to help me, and so the 2 of us ran, as I recall, it was 18 battalions, 6 groups. He stayed at home and kept the brigade headquarters intact, and he let me travel throughout the different countries we were assigned to, like Vietnam, Korea, Thailand, Laos. The core mission of the 1st Signal Brigade was to have a complete telecommunication system like ATT is to the state systems. We came darn close to doing that, connecting all the tactical systems so that one with these could and some soldiers tried to get away with it, dial a phone in and get into California or wherever. The 1st Signal Brigade, besides tying together every tactical system, so really, you could go from the foxhole to the Pentagon with ease. We built it that way, worked on it, had the people to do it, trained the people to do it. One could be critical of us that we shouldn't have had such a perfect system. But I believe very strongly that in war, the key things in war are move, and shoot, and communicate. And you don't do much moving, and you don't do much shooting, and unless you have pretty solid communication from the private to the sergeant to the company commander to the battalion commander, so necessary to defeat an enemy, because he's trying to figure out how he can defeat you. There was a lot of firefight. Actually, about a month after I took over was the Tet Offensive, in which the enemy tried to kill and get rid of many of the Army units because of their training and because of the help of the infantry and the artillery and the armor. Tet, while we lost a couple hundred soldiers because of this training, because of the assigned infantry to the units in the brigade, because of lots of Air Force support we had been trained in, and lots of barbed wire. The enemy had never really gotten into the middle of any of the mountaintop commands or signal units. I felt we did rather well in Tet in defending as infantry people the many sites, and none were overrun by the enemy. Many times when they would go in an operation, say from Vietnam into Cambodia, they would ask for support. The people in the brigade would follow the infantry into Cambodia. It would be right there to again tie the communication system into the world, right in the middle of the fight.
From June 1970 to May 1971, Major General Hugh Foster and Command Sergeant Major Jesse Tolson continued to lead the largest signal brigade in combat. One of the innovations that circumvented the difficult terrain in enemy situation was the introduction of an extensive tropospheric scatter radio relay system, which provided numerous communication channels over distances of several hundred miles between sites.
Hugh Foster, we were good friends. In fact, his wife and my wife were good friends. He was a knowledgeable communicator, a good friend, and I'm sure took the brigade when he took over and moved it ahead in providing the shooters with what they needed. I liked Hugh Foster, knew him, and for life we were very good friends.
During the period of May 1971 and June 1972, Brigadier General Wilburn Weaver and Command Sergeant Major James Weaver prepared the brigade for the stand-down. The redeployment of the 1st Signal Brigade almost as significant as its buildup. Caught by the U.S. reductions in force that affected the pullout from Southeast Asia, the 1st Signal Brigade reduced its strength from 21,000 in 1968 to less than 1,300 by November of 1972.
Buck Weaver was my deputy for about half my tour. He allowed me to get out and go to the 16 battalions each day so I could be out in the country, and he ran the office. A good friend, our wives knew each other, a darn good communicator.
Between June 1972 and November 1972, Brigadier General Charles Meyer and Command Sergeant Major Andrew Dillard initiated the departure of American forces from the Republic of Vietnam that was accompanied by a decline in communications facilities need to support them. All signal sites, from the dedicated communications gear to the building that housed it, had to be dismantled, packed, and shipped to destinations around the world. More than $50 million worth of communications equipment and facilities were recovered between 1970 to 1972. For its service in Vietnam, the 1st Signal Brigade was credited with the following campaign participation credits: Counteroffensive, Counteroffensive Phase 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tet, 1969. Counteroffensive, Summer, Fall, 1969. Winter, Spring, 1970. Sanctuary Counteroffensive. Counteroffensive Phase 7. Consolidation 1 and 2. Ceasefire. The brigade also earned 3 meritorious unit citations along with streamers with the Vietnam 1966 to 1967, Vietnam 1967 to 1969, and Vietnam 1970 to 1972. In November 1972, the brigade colors were transferred to the Republic of Korea and put under the custodianship of the U.S. Army Strategic Communications Command.